John Wycliff was born in Hipswell, England, 200 miles from London in the 1320s. He appears on the scene at Oxford in 1346, where he spent most of his life studying and teaching. The first major disruption caused by Wycliff was his refusal to comply with papal taxation to the English Church, a people who were already heavily taxed due to their coming 100 Years' War between the French, as Edward III claimed ownership of Normandy and Philip VI disputed his claims. Wycliff strongly refuted the papal taxation. It was a time of nationalism in England to outside powers, and the time was ripe for Wycliff to preach church reform. He recognized that the church was far too wealthy in land ownership, and in 1376 began preaching a biblical message of stewardship over God's property rather than ecclesiastical ownership of the property. Pope Gregory XI condemned Wycliff's ideas and writings, but Wycliff gained powerful friends and was able to withstand the condemnation of Rome and continue his teachings. Shortly after was a Western Schism, where the Catholic Church was split, and three different men, Clement VII, Alexander V, and Urban VI, all claimed the office of Pope. Wycliff, who was interested in restoring the Church to the New Testament ideal, detested the schism. This began a string of attacks from Wycliff against the Roman Church, as he argued that the Bible has an authority higher than the Church's teachings, and the Bible was the only reliable source for God's truth. He argued against the authority of the Pope. He argued that Jesus Christ was the head of the Church. He argued against purgatory, and openly taught against the celibacy of the priesthood, indulgences, and the need for praying to the saints. He then continued in the 1380s to translate the Bible, which was the Latin Vulgate at the time, into English, as he sought to get the Bible into as many Englishmen' hands as possible in order to spread the truth of his teachings and continue to expose the Catholic Church. His goal was a true reform of the Church by placing the Bible into the hands of the laity. His retirement from the rectory at Lutterworth was forced when he openly denied the Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation. His response? To create an order of priests who were not dependent on wealth or any formal ordination by the Church, but rather were essentially traveling preachers whose aim was to spread the gospel through the preaching of the Word. The Church had given the name of the Lollards to this group of preachers. This group of preachers were ultimately responsible for teaching many students in England who were from Bohemia the gospel and Wycliff's teachings, who then traveled to their home and spread the same ideas. Wycliff is thus responsible for inspiring John Huss to teach very similar doctrines in his day within Bohemia. Wycliff, enjoying the support of England and Parliament, was able to live a generally normal life until his death at 64 years of age in 1384. It wasn't until 1415 at the Council of Constance that Wycliff was declared a heretic. His bones were dug up and burned along with his writings and cast into the River Swift in England. Wycliff has become known as the morning star of the Reformation, as his preaching were strong influences for the grand reformer himself, Martin Luther. And today we look back and celebrate his boldness to preach and teach the truth in the midst of such hostility, and we thank him for his place in church history of the preservation of the gospel.